Welcome to the Bellwether College Consortium Summer Innovation Series. My name is Rose Martinez. I serve as the director for this respected and influential think tank of award-winning colleges. For those of you who may not be familiar with the consortium, BCC is charged with addressing critical issues facing community colleges through applied research and the promotion and replication of best practices. We focus on three broad areas of innovation and honor a worthy community college in each of these three award categories. There are workforce development, instructional programs and services, and the last is planning, governance, and finance. Annually, the consortium also proudly honors an exemplary, impactful dissertation study through our competitive Outstanding Dissertation Award competition, affectionately known as ODA. The winning dissertation focuses on a trending, well-researched community college issue. And so we find by marrying our community college innovators with exemplary community college research, we provide a national platform to accelerate community college learning, success, and growth. Today, it is my pleasure to host this last session of the 2023 BCC Summer Innovation Series by welcoming this year's recipient of the BCC Outstanding Dissertation Award. Welcome, Dr. Niraj Wagh. Dr. Wagh presented his award-winning dissertation research to a ballroom-filled crowd of community college innovators at the Community College Futures Assembly this last February. This is a unique and important opportunity for our members, who are also, by the way, competing for a Bellwether Award, to learn about the latest community college research. You can find more information on the consortium, the Outstanding Dissertation Award Competition, the Bellwether Award Competition, and the Futures Assembly at bellwethercollegeconsortium.com. Everyone is invited to attend, member or not. Today, I am pleased to host Dr. Wagh, whose dissertation titled Queer Students of Color, Sense of Inclusion in Community Colleges, which received the 2023 Outstanding Dissertation Award to this session. Dr. Wagh, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Rose, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Niraj Wagh, and I currently serve as a tenured math professor and developmental math discipline coordinator at Lindsay College in Orlando, Florida. In August, I will be starting a new role as the Dean of STEM and Business at Seattle Central College in Seattle, Washington. I defended my dissertation in the January of 2022 and graduated with my doctorate degree in higher education administration from the University of Florida in the spring of 2022. I also have a master's degree in mathematics from the Ohio State University and a bachelor's degree in human biology from Michigan State University. Equity, diversity, and inclusion are a pivotal part of my practice, and dismantling barriers that many of our historically marginalized students face is a core part of my mission and my work. It is an honor to have received this award, and I'm looking forward to our discussion.
Thank you for joining us today and sharing your really important and timely research. So let's go start it with the questions. First, Niraj, explain why you chose your dissertation topic. Specifically explain why you chose queer students of color, sense of inclusion among our community colleges.
Sure, thank you. So as I was deciding a topic, I knew the area that I wanted to research had to have meaning to me. For me, as a queer person of color, I had gone through certain experiences in college, both positive and negative, that impacted how included I felt at the institution that I was studying at. While I went to four-year institutions all throughout my undergraduate and graduate studies, personally, I had challenges with housing, making friendships, and feeling safe at my school for being a queer person of color. Currently, I work at a community college, and because of my experiences, I wanted to know what experiences our queer students of color had and whether or not they were similar or different than my own. For example, at community colleges, many of our students live at home with their parents and thought that this might be a difficulty if the student was not out to their family at home. Also, many community colleges do not have as robust of student development programs as four-year schools do. So I wanted to see if that was the case, and if it was, what could we do as practitioners to help the student population? In terms of curriculum, many of our courses at community colleges focus on general education requirements, which can sometimes preclude courses that utilize culturally relevant pedagogies. So going into this, my initial thoughts, but I wanted to know ultimately, what could I do to create more inclusive spaces in which our queer sorts of color felt safe, supported, and valued? I know how much of an impact it would have had for me when I was a student. So I wanted to see a topic that I could create positive impact with. Also a priority for me to share my findings with other community college practitioners so we can work together to create spaces that value inclusivity for queers of color. So that is why I chose this topic.
Great. Well, it looks like you did a lot of thoughtful, background in terms of why you chose the topic, and it's very timely. So we're super excited to have you here today and learn more. Briefly, set the stage for your data collection.
Sure. So I used a qualitative research methodology and utilized narrative inquiry. This design provides the participant the opportunity to tell their experience and story. A blended approach utilizing both constructivist and critical epistemologies was used. A constructivist stance illustrates how individuals learn from new knowledge that can be connected to current existing knowledge to create meaning. And a critical stance seeks to challenge existing power structures by using that knowledge. And to guide this research, a queer crit perspective was used to challenge power dynamics and social norms for queers of color. On the next slide, to collect data, I sought approval for research of human participants from the Institutional Review Board at the University of Florida and at the community colleges that I actively recruited from. Participants from the community colleges that I did not actively recruit from contacted me directly through a recruitment flyer, which had been shared by various school personnel and is shown here. I engaged in purposeful criterion sampling, which means that participants had to identify as a queer student, be a person of color, be enrolled at a community college in the United States, and be at least 18 years old. I conducted 2 semi-structured interviews through a phone call or Zoom, and each participant received a $25 Amazon gift card after they completed the first interview. On the next slide, these tables show pseudonyms of the students who participated in the study. Next slide. Their queer identity, racial/ethnic identity, gender pronouns, and a pseudonym of the community college they were enrolled in is also shown. On the next slide, a total of 19 participants from 8 community colleges. And on the next slide, in Florida and California were in the study.
Can you share more on one student with a poignant story and what you learned from their experience?
Yes, so many of the students had poignant stories in the study, unfortunately. I will elaborate on one story that showed the importance of gender-inclusive restrooms on campus. So for one participant, his name was Mateus, and he identified as a trans male student who did not feel safe using restrooms on campus. And on the campus, there was a lack of gender-inclusive restrooms. And because of this, Mateus had to go to a Starbucks by the school after classes to use the restroom, since many have all gender restrooms. And this story had profound impact because many community colleges do not have gender-inclusive restrooms. Or if they do, there is only one located within one building on campus. And if students attend a large community college, they have to walk quite a distance to just use the restroom to feel safe in. So if a student has a schedule that has back-to-back classes, this can cause them to be late to the next class, which can make them stressed out, or the professor can get mad at the student for being late to class. Students who identify as trans or non-binary may not feel comfortable letting their instructor know they identify as trans or non-binary, which can cause further difficulty. Additionally, not being able to use the restroom can cause students like Matthias to perform worse in their classes because they cannot pay attention easily if they have to use the restroom, but do not feel safe to do so. From this story, I learned that we as community college professionals need to do a better job in creating more gender inclusive restrooms on college campuses. For example, where I work, we have 2 single stall restrooms that were meant for students with disabilities, but we added a sign showing it's gender inclusive, which is a cost-effective way of doing this.
Yeah, no. That was a really important story to share and really enlightening in terms of, yes, you take for granted the opportunity to go to the bathroom whenever you want and wherever you want in terms of where those facilities are located and how they identify particular individuals that go in and out of the bathroom. So yeah, it makes you think a lot about things we take for granted. Thank you for sharing that experience of that student. For your study, what is meant by inclusion? Can you share more?
Yes, so for the purpose of this study, sense of inclusion pertain to how included, safe, supported, engaged, and welcomed the queer students of color felt inside and outside of their classroom with their peers, professors, and staff members at the college. Inside the classroom, this could mean how supportive where instructors were of their identity and what they taught in the classroom. Outside the classroom, this can mean if the community college had, for example, gender inclusive restrooms on campus or a LGBTQ student organization on campus.
How does inclusion differ by instructors, administrators, and the student body? Can you illustrate a scenario for us?
Sure. So inclusion can vary based upon instructors, administrators, and the student body. I can illustrate 3 scenarios based on each category. For instructors, inclusion can mean if the instructor asks their students their gender pronouns and preferred names on the first day of class to be more familiar with how their students identify. It can also mean if the instructor teaches content that relates to their students. For example, in a history class, are the topics solely focused on Eurocentric ideas, or are they teaching topics from other countries in the world that are diverse and relate to their students' backgrounds? In a math class, are students encouraged to show their work in different ways? For example, if we are serving an international student and that student learned a particular method of doing math in their native country, does the instructor celebrate their way of doing math, or is the instructor telling them that they have to do it one way that they were taught in the class? So curriculum is the significant part of inclusion for instructors. For administrators, does the campus have gender inclusive restrooms? Does the admission application for the institution include an area to put gender and preferred names? This can be a significant barrier for many trans and non-binary students. How are the policies and procedures at the college? Are they gender inclusive? Has there been revisions to existing policies to be more inclusive? What is the annual review process like? And for the student body, do students treat each other with respect inside and out of the classroom? Many individuals in the study mentioned that their peers inside the classroom often alienated them or made them feel bad about themselves for identifying as a queer student of color. In terms of race and ethnicity, in a predominantly white community college, many students of color reported feeling isolated and not included because their peers would not engage with them in the classroom. In this manner, it is really up to the instructor to help foster this inclusion with students who alienate others by stepping in and standing up for their students of color if they hear any inappropriate language.
Great. No, thank you for enlightening us on those different scenarios and how important it was for inclusion to be shared by the instructor, administrator, and student body. Can you share? Well, you researched in class and out of class experiences by queer students of color. Did one matter more than the other, or were they equally important? Can you say more about what you found?
Yes. So I would say both in-class and out-of-class experiences were important equally. Inside the classroom, what the instructor taught had a significant impact on sense of inclusion. When students could tell that their instructor taught curriculum that related to them, they could tell that their instructors cared about how included they felt. Even from the first day of class, if the instructor asked for their gender pronouns and preferred names, it had a significant impact, particularly on trans and non-binary students. However, not all experiences were positive. For example, many participants reported feeling stereotype threat, which is defined as the threat of being viewed through the lens of a negative stereotype, or the fear of doing something that would inadvertently confirm the stereotype. So they try to prove that stereotype wrong, which can put undue pressure on the student and can actually make them perform worse. One participant mentioned that English was his second language, and his professor assumed that he needed a Spanish textbook instead of English. And all his classmates heard this in public. The student had an accent, and because of the remarks from his professor, he felt like because he wasn't as fluent in English as his peers, that he wasn't as smart as his classmates. In another example, one participant reported feeling like the native informant, which means that the professor basically thinks the student is an expert on a topic because of their race or ethnicity. In this example, the student identified as an African American, and the professor assumed that they were an expert of jazz music because of their background. And this made them feel uncomfortable, especially when the professor singled them out during a classroom discussion. Now, outside the classroom, if a community college had gender-inclusive restrooms, it made them feel like they had safety at their school. When they saw pride flags or Black Lives Matter signs on campus hallways, it allowed them to feel seen. If the community college had a LGBTQ or a cultural student organization, it allows students to meet others who identified like themselves. So it made them feel a stronger sense of inclusion. A few negative examples include when a LGBTQ student organization received less funding from student development, in which the students had to use their own money to fund activities and events on campus. For many student development departments, how much funding is allocated is based on the number of students in the organization, which could be a barrier to many LGBTQ organizations, especially if they are new on campus. Also, many students reported harassment from other students when they were having meetings during their organization. Many participants reported that they could not show PDA, like holding hands with their same-sex partner on campus, because employees or students would stare at them. One participant reported being yelled at by a staff member by holding their girlfriend's hand in the hallway, which made her not want to come back to her school. So these types of examples had pivotal impact. And one negative experience is all it took some participants to not want to come back to their community college.
Thank you for sharing those examples. Did the community colleges provide the participants in your study opportunities for learning more about themselves? I know you've spoken about ways they could, but maybe we could explore ways they did, if they did. And if so, like I suggest, how and in what way?
Sure. So inside the classroom, instructors played the greatest role in providing opportunities for participants to learn more about themselves. For example, if the curriculum they taught had relation to the participants' identities, they were able to learn more about themselves, as well as other students who had different queer, racial, or ethnic identities. One participant from Puerto Rico identified as a gay male, and he mentioned that learning about queer individuals in one of his humanities classes positively impacted him, because discussions that regard homosexuality were not really talked about in Puerto Rico. So having that discussion in the classroom at a community college helped him learn more about himself in the US. Also in the classroom, when instructors stood up for their queer students of color, it made them feel like someone of authority was looking out for them, which made them feel like they had importance. Now, outside of the classroom, student development provided opportunities for participants to learn more about themselves through registered student organizations. Overwhelmingly, participants reported that having a LGBTQ organization on campus created such a positive impact on how they felt, because they could talk to other students who are like themselves, which gave them more knowledge about their own selves, but also learn about their other peers' backgrounds as well. Thank you.
You have 5 major themes embedded in your findings. Please say more about each theme related finding.
Sure. So the first theme is visibility. The first category is having pride flags, Black Lives Matter signs, and other supporting signage on their campus. In the hallways, on their professor's office doors, or in the classroom, allowed the participants to feel valued and seen. Having faculty display their ally certification is a second category. Inside the classroom, seeing that a professor was trained to be an ally to the queer community was impactful. And the third category is having visibility through peers and school personnel who looked like and or identified as queer and or of color. Many participants had prior adverse experiences with others who identified as white. And this quote from Ava summarizes that experience. On the next slide, the second theme is affirmation of identity. The first category is the use of gender pronouns and preferred names. Since many trans participants identify with a different name than the one on their academic record, having the ability to have their professors know their preferred name was imperative. The second category is having school personnel publicly support their queer students of color by standing up for them. If a professor stopped cisgender heterosexual students from using queerphobic language, it helped the participants feel like a person of authority was looking out for them. The third category is having gender-neutral bathrooms on campus, specifically for trans and non-binary students. Not having gender-inclusive restrooms decreased their sense of inclusion. And this quote from Mateus summarizes that experience.
Read that quote just for the audience.
Sure. So this quote says, "I would avoid public restrooms at all costs. If I had to, I would hold it. I would not go. I would find alternatives. I work at Starbucks. All of the restrooms are gender neutral. I would wait until I got out of school and I would go to a nearby Starbucks." And I think it shows an impact of how detrimental it is to have these on campus. So on the next slide, the third theme is the importance of curriculum. The first category is exclusion of racial, ethnic, and queer identities in the curriculum. Not having representation of their background made the participants feel isolated due to their inability to relate to the course material. The second category is the restriction of inclusive assignments. For example, one participant, Pooja, mentioned that they were asked to write an essay about a culture different than their own, but their professor restricted it to cultures that were only in Europe or North America, which made them feel like their perspective was not valuable. The third category is positive, inclusive content, and this increased their sense of inclusion. And this quote by Remy summarizes that as well. She says, "I don't know what it means to be straight. I don't know what it means to be white, but I can give my opinion more if it was more diverse." And then on the next slide, the fourth theme is safe spaces. And the first category here is having registered student organizations, such as the Gay Straight Alliance. It provided many participants an outlet to meet others who are like themselves. The second category is having specific areas on campus where the participants felt safe. For one participant, going to a safe space such as a unity zone gave them safety to be themselves, where they could do their homework without being stared at or hearing negative comments. For other participants, going to spaces such as the cafeteria and the math lab gave them safety. And this quote here by Mateus summarizes experiences of being in a GSA. And he says, "I am in the GSA club because I feel safe there. I feel so comfortable and so at home when I'm talking to people that can understand me. I don't have to make them understand or make them understand how I'm feeling. They just accept me." And on the fifth slide, the fifth theme is isolation and discrimination. The first category is being enrolled in a predominantly white community college, which made participants feel isolated. It made them feel like just because they were not white, they were stereotyped and less understood by their white peers and professors. The second category is when participants were othered by their peers and school personnel. Outside the classroom, showing public displays of affection caused participants to feel like they could not be themselves with their significant other. Many participants also experienced stereotype threat, which is the third category. Stereotype threat is defined as the threat of being viewed through the lens of a negative stereotype or the fear of doing something that would inadvertently confirm the stereotype. In the classroom, many professors made assumptions or comments based on their identity that made the participants feel less than. And the final category is having or encountering experiences that were discriminatory in nature from being in a queer organization on campus. Many participants reported a lack of funding from student development staff for the organization in comparison to other organizations, which made them feel like their presence was not valued. And this quote here from Alejandro talks about stereotype threat. And he says, "People assume that you might be less intelligent because you don't sound like them. Thankfully, every single time I've had the opportunity to prove them wrong. I am as capable as everyone is."
Thank you for that. Dr. Wagh, what were the implications for practice at community colleges who can encourage and employ? Can you share those?
Of course. So there are many implications for practice that community college practitioners can employ at their institutions. On the next slide, we look at faculty. Faculty can create introductory assignments or activities to discuss the importance of gender pronouns and preferred names. If they notice derogatory remarks from other students, it is important that they step in and inform those students that remarks against the queer community of color are not tolerated, also using the student code of conduct. Faculty can also engage in professional development opportunities at the college, such as ally certification and cultural competencies. Faculty can put affirming signs on their office doors or in their classroom to show their support. faculty can also incorporate more diverse content and assignments in the classroom, as well as adopt textbooks from authors that represent different races, ethnicities, and queer backgrounds. And on the next slide, we look at student development staff. If a community college does not have organizations on campus, such as the Gay Straight Alliance or multicultural organizations, they should be created. An analysis of how much funding the Gay Straight Alliance receives should be conducted. Many participants reported receiving less funding in comparison to other organizations. Student development staff can also hold events on campus throughout the year that are inclusive for all races, ethnicities, and queer identities. On the next slide, we look at enrollment management staff. They can create admission applications that are inclusive so that they are a section where a student can put their gender pronoun and preferred name. And correspondingly, information technology or IT staff can update class rosters to include these so that faculty are aware of how their students identify. IT staff can also update college faculty web pages so that faculty can show their ally certification and any cultural competencies they have studied or received. Many participants noted that knowing that their professor was supportive prior to enrolling in the class impacted whether or not they enrolled in a particular professor's class. And on the next slide, we look at administrators. So administrators can create a task force to examine the restrooms at their community college. If there is an existing gendered single stall restroom, they can either change the sign to gender inclusive, or they can just add a sign saying it's gender inclusive. This is a very cost-effective way to utilize gender inclusive restrooms is by adding a sign. If a community college does not already have PD opportunities for ally certification, they can begin the process of creating these by hiring faculty and faculty development staff who have expertise in these areas. They can also improve reward structures for PD by requiring equity-minded courses to be taken by faculty and staff members. For example, the amount faculty or staff get compensated for taking equity-minded courses can increase, and that can impact the reward structure of compensation. Fourth, administrators can also go in the community to recruit people who are queer and of color, going to community centers, going to high schools to do outreach is very important to diversify their student population. In relation to this, they can put also a stronger emphasis on hiring people of color as well as individuals who identify with the queer community by creating and mandating equity-minded training that focuses on hiring practices. Administrators can create a committee to determine the current environments within each of the buildings of the community college and also determine where they can put a multicultural or queer student center as well.
Thank you. I think the recommendations, the suggestions you have are just on point with what our community colleges should be doing, and in many cases are beginning to be aware that they can be a part of that space. And many of them are very quick fixes, so to speak, that can be done. And I think for some, just knowing this kind of research is very helpful and enlightening to maybe things they didn't consider or think about. So Niraj, thank you for sharing your knowledge and insights on how community colleges can better support our LGBTQ communities of students. Best wishes for continued success in your new role at Seattle Central College. To our audience members, thank you for being with us today. Consider competing for the 2024 Outstanding Dissertation Award. The portal will open soon. You do not need to be a BCC member to apply. Go to the bellwethercollegeconsortium.com for more information on the eligibility requirements. And just to say thank you for everyone again for joining us. This concludes our innovation session. Thank you, Niraj. Thank you, Robert Acosta, also, who is helping with this recording today. Appreciate it.